Hey guys, this is Casey and Cole. We are about to have a conversation with Sidney Smith. He is found on Instagram at try_no_feet. He is a popular outdoorsman in our community, and he's a double amputee. He's a triathlete, an Ironman triathlete, an outdoorsman, and a father. We, in this conversation, jump pretty straight into the details of what his health medical experience has been, and how this all started and how he became so well known in our community. But I just wanted to introduce him as somebody who is a really significant figure as a motivational speaker, an athlete, an outdoorsman who has really overcome some significant stuff. But yeah, enjoy the episode. We ask him a lot of important questions about what does it mean to have a disability, how has that enabled him in other ways, and his own journey as a hunter and as somebody who has had to deal with mental health problems associated with his illness. It's a really great episode, so stay tuned, and here you go.
Sweet. Well, welcome back. Survival of the Fittest podcast, episode 7, right? And we've got special guest today, Sidney Smith. Thanks for joining us, Sidney.
Thank you. Lucky number 7. That's
right. And the way we have it listed is 007. So you're 007 today.
I'm Smith. It's Sid Smith.
That's right. There you go. So Sidney Smith, and then I'm Cole Halley.
And I'm Casey Evans.
I think I'll just start off by kind of giving a brief connection to how you and I connected, Sidney. So recently, Western Hunt Expo in Salt Lake, I went one day and then decided I got to go back. It was just too good. And I wanted to go check out all these booths, because I brought kids the first time. It's just too distracting. And I wanted to look at these booths that were, kind of spoke to me. And one of the first ones I stopped by that night was the Disabled Outdoorsmen of Utah booth. And that's, Sidney, you were working there that night or helping out or whatever. So yeah, I can't remember the details, but we, obviously we got to talking about hunting and experiences, like the impacts it's had on you, on me, just light talk, and kind of, more natural or primal kind of instances in nature. And then I was like, hey, we've got a podcast that talks about surviving and connecting with the environment. And you were nice enough to say, I'd love to join. So that's why Sidney's here today. I will say you looked familiar to me when I was talking to you, and it wasn't until maybe a day after I was like, I swear I know this guy. And I looked up your name and I found out you're a pretty big deal. You're like, who are we to have you on our podcast? And I think that there are some videos floating out there. You've probably been on some previous podcasts, some friends or other people's podcasts before, seems.
A couple, yeah.
Yeah. And I think that you could reference those. We'll try and link those in the notes, but I think those will probably give a more in-depth bio on you, Sidney. And I think there's some clips and stuff like that. I know that you was it First Light? They did a video on you, First Light Hunting Apparel. Yeah. It's pretty cool.
That was a really cool video. And hopefully you'll be able to retell parts of obviously you'll be able to tell parts of it, but one part in particular, which was really exciting, which Cole introduced me to you as well. I didn't know I hadn't heard about you or seen anything that you'd done, but watching what happened to you, I think, was it in Colorado? Was that where that was?
Yeah. Oh, the lake break.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. You're going to have to give us later just a little taste of what that was like, because that's a really remarkable story and sounds quite frightening, honestly.
It was pretty intense. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll give it back to you, Cole. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. I think I just kind of want to paint the picture for what we're going to talk about today. I don't think, we want to spend a majority of our time like given a bio on Sidney. There's a lot of stuff out there that's covered that. I think that it would be a good idea to, if you are willing to give us a brief overview. I might be not pronouncing it right. Is it Charcot-Marie-Tooth disease? Is that how you pronounce it?
Close. Charcot.
Charcot.
It's named after a French guy that discovered it. So.
Okay. So Charcot-Marie-Tooth disease, and then how, like, maybe a brief origin of that and like how it continues to impact your life day to day. And then maybe just like a brief little bio. And then we want to get straight into the reason we're here, like the living primal, the surviving, and doing so in a modern world, because that was our original conversation. And we definitely want to talk about it.
Sure. Yeah. So it's a disease like we talked about. It's called Charcot-Marie-Tooth. It's a progressive genetic disorder in the muscular dystrophy family. It's something I was born with. But I wasn't diagnosed with it until I was in the 5th grade. So basically, I was born with the perfect body. This disease typically spreads through strains of genetics that's carried on through generations. For me, I didn't have anybody I knew that had it. There was, maybe some journal entries with the pioneers that settled Utah. They talked about, an individual that rode in the wagon because he had bad feet. That's all we had known from that. I had it. I was diagnosed in the 5th grade. Basically what it does, it affects specifically, or I says majority of the time, your hands and your feet. So it can deform them. It makes the muscles atrophy at first. And then like for feet, for example, you get hammered toes, your arches curl, then at that point, then things start to deform. For me, it affected my feet first pretty heavily, where I just couldn't walk very well. I had corrective surgeries to try to fix the foot so that I could, wear a shoe and whatnot. And then it turned into the Forrest Gump braces. And then it went to many surgeries. And eventually when I hit 30, it got really hard to walk, and I couldn't do the things I grew up doing, like hunting and doing any outdoor activities, play with my kids. That became hard. And then when I was 33, I finally struggled to like go to Walmart, even to the end of the back of the store. And so I was walking on my ankles because my heels turned out.
Was that mostly pain, or was it instability? What was the limiting factor there? I'm guessing a lot of it was pain, right?
It was both. Like it just, the function of not having muscle down there, it was just bone and skin and bone. And then ulcers started, the joint would break down. So I get arthritis, and then the bones in my feet would break because they're so brittle, because our muscles do act as a protective for our bone as well. And then, so then I went to the doctor to see if we can do another surgery. And he's like, we can't do much. So he recommended prosthetics, or we could try to, fuse things together, but then I wouldn't be able to really walk. So in 2015 is when we went through the process and amputated one foot at a time. So that's been the challenge with that disease. It did help, of course, because now I can do so many things. I can walk, I can run. In prosthetic is obviously the best choice. And then that's been pretty much it. And then just a couple of years ago, my hips started to fatigue a little bit. So I've been doing some physical therapy in my hands as well. It affects my hands, and it kind of goes in waves. Like for a while, it went downhill a couple of years ago, and went through some therapy, and got on a thing called testosterone replacement therapy, and that's helped with keeping my strength, or at least maintain it. So I'm kind of at a plateau right now.
Good. Well, thanks for sharing that, man. That is, and so when you, underwent your first amputation, you said you were in 30, 31, somewhere around there?
33. When I had the
Okay,
first
so there was a couple years before you really started to feel like you were not walking well before they finally decided to do that surgery. Okay.
Yeah, I fought it. I really didn't know any amputees or even knew of prosthetics. Like, I always imagined, like, if you get your legs cut off, then that's an end game scenario. You know, that sounds awful, but, you know, you think of Lieutenant Dan on Forrest Gump. That's what I was imagining. And then, you know, you look at Pistorius, or Oscar Pistorius, the guy in the Olympics, and, you know, he was running. And so I was like, oh, you know, I guess it could be possible.
Could go one of two ways.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay.
That must have been really hard. See, I kind of, not knowing, I guess I thought it was something that happened earlier, like maybe preteens, but you lived like a well-established adult life, active lifestyle, and then you've got to change that up when you're, you know, established with a family.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably got to be pretty rough.
It was just because of not knowing what the future would bring. Like, I was in the dumps. You know, I was in a really bad spot mentally, too, because, you know, my kids were getting to the point where I can go play with them, but it was, you know, not something I thought I could do. And then, you know, it just became a financial burden too, because I was always trying to get my feet fixed. And then if, you know, with pain, that's, you know, I had lived with 6 broken bones for the last 3 or 4 years and never did get them taken care of. And so what ended up happening just was on chronic pain all the time. And so motivation and just being positive was a struggle, because you're always, you know, in pain, and, you know, ibuprofen can only do so much.
Wow. Yeah, I have a lot of questions. I think let's kind of cover this, not to get it out of the way, but just to give a little bit of a background. You said you're living in Vernal now. Did you grow up in Vernal, or where'd you grow up at?
I grew up in Provo, at
Cool.
good old Tinview High School. I lived in Provo, and then I went on a mission in Montana, came back, went to school at BYU in BYU, Idaho, met my wife there, lived in Lake Powell for 6 years. And then when the oil field boomed, they needed hotel guys, because that's what high school for, or excuse me, college for. And so moved to Vernal there and switched careers since then. And I don't think we'll ever move. We love it there. It's an outdoor paradise.
What were you doing you said Lake Powell? You lived down there for several years. What were you doing down there?
In Bullfrog, yeah. I ran the hotel and restaurant there at the Defiance House. I did that just right out of college. It was my first big boy job. And that was paradise too. I love that. You have the Henry Mountains right there. You know, a lot of times I had to go to different places on the lake, so we took the boats, and, you know, it was kind of a nice commute to work. I could take a boat from one spot to the other, and
Cool.
Bring a fishing pole on the side. So.
Cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's an adventure. I didn't want to leave, but it's and we've been back since. And of course, it's not the best place to raise a family. We had some good memories, and there's some good things that our kids loved about it. But now with, you know, what my kids do in sports and in dance competitions, and, you know, we have a movie theater and all that kind of stuff, we enjoy the big city of Vernal.
Cool. So you grew up in Provo. What was your family dynamic like growing up? Like brothers, sisters? Were they all into the outdoors? What was that like?
Yeah, I have 2 brothers and 2 sisters, and they all are big in the outdoors. They didn't have the same disease I had, so they didn't have any limitations. My brothers and my oldest sister, but mostly my younger brothers. I'm the second of 5 kids, and my brother that's right below me, he's a hiking fool. Like he's been on all the peaks in Utah. He's a big waterfall guy or waterfall guy. So he's out there going to every waterfall. He's hiking all the time. So they love the outdoors. They hunt too. I probably hunt I definitely hunt the most. I think I have more of that as an obsession than they do, but they still big into the outdoors.
Cool. And then so you were second of 5 kids, and then you've got 4 or 5. What did you say earlier?
Yeah, 4 kids. 4 kids. My oldest boy's
from the ages
15, 13, 10, and 6. It keeps us busy.
I wouldn't have guessed that, man. You don't look that old. 15-year-old.
That surprises me.
Well, good for you. So when did you do your first hunt?
Growing up or as an amputee?
No, growing up as a kid. Did your dad take you out? Is this something you had to get into yourself?
No. Yeah, it was a family tradition. So my family comes from southern Utah, and so we have a mountain there on Dutton that we go to, and so they, my family's from Circleville, Utah, and my grandpa, great grandpa, they were all, one of the original people there, and so it's just been a family tradition to go deer hunting. So growing up, that was what we did. That's what we lived for. That was what we always spent our time off at, is to go deer hunting. We had horses, we rode horses, and it was adventure. Like as a kid, that was like the most, primal thing I've ever done, is to go miles and miles on a horse. Of course there's no cell phones then, and we didn't have the fancy hunting gear that I have now with First Light. We wore last year's, pair of basketball shoes and jeans that we didn't care. And if we needed waterproof boots, my dad just put Walmart, or not Walmart, but grocery store sacks inside, so keep our feet dry.
Oh gosh, a Circleville special.
Yeah, that was so.
Casey,
that was it. Then that was my first. In fact, one of the first bucks that I had shot. I was with my grandpa, and that was a real special moment to have him there to witness it. And then as an amputee, the very first deer that big game animal I had killed after I lost my leg, which was a kind of a big moment for me, because it was like a turning thing mentally that, hey, you were, in prosthetics, maybe you can do the things you always want to, and then some. You don't know what your limitations are, but I had shot a deer and it had died near a tree, and the tree had my great grandfather's name written in it, just right underneath the tree. It was pretty cool. So back then, they wrote their names on every tree up there. So if you see Smith on the Dutton, that's my family.
Cool. That's really cool. Yeah.
When you got that first kill after amputation, were you more so like, oh, I can still do this? Or were you more like, still got it, baby? Like, let's keep it rolling?
I was pumped because that was when I killed that deer. I had just one leg amputated, and so the reason why I had one and then the other was because my house was small, and so I didn't have like wheelchair accessibility. So I just thought I'd just wear crutches. I knew I'd lose them both eventually, but I just strategically tried to plan it out so that like I got used to the one and the other. So in between that time, I was pretty pumped because I found out that I was way better on my freshly new amputated prosthetic leg than I was on my, meat leg is what I called it, I guess. And I was, well, if I'm this good on this foot, then I can be amazing on two. And like it's just, I guess the whole confidence kind of was there. I could see the light at the end of the tunnel. So having that deer kill was like, this could be big.
Do you feel like it gives you an advantage when you have a double amputee comparing it? Like, are you able to climb or spring better and on inclines at all, or is it a disadvantage, or like how would you compare the two as far as hunting wise?
I would say if I compare it to a normal able body, no, having one's is way easier than having two. There's really no benefit there. But for me, it was because my meat legs were so mangled and beat up anyways that a prosthetic was way better. But the disadvantages I have like now that I would say when I hunt with people, or I should say two-legged freaks that have two legs,
losers.
Some of the things that I like going uphill, no problem, because I dig my toe into the ground and the energy that I put into the prosthetic, the ankle itself is carbon fiber, and so it gives a flexion and then it gives me a return. It ends up being like half, but it's enough to get me into the next step. And so balance wise, I'm on my toes and I'm just able to climb just fine like anybody else. The downside is the heel. So when I go down, the heel is just a small ledge. And so I lose balance. And then when I have stuff on my back, like a gun or backpack, then it becomes really hard. So that's tough. And then hunting like around things that grab my ankles that I can't feel, like sagebrush or uneven terrain, like the ground, like rocks and stuff, that becomes challenging. It just becomes like a feel for it. So like hiking through like a boulder field, like when I climb Kings Peak, when there's a big boulder field that gets to Kings Peak. Well, to walk that section, it was just to feel like where's the pressure pushing on the prosthetic on the what side of the knee. If it's on the outside of the knee or the inside of the knee, that means my weight's going to shift this way. So then I just counterbalance it by shifting it that way, and then it just works the same way with my hip. It just becomes like a feel of the pressure. It seemed like when I drive my car with the brake and the gas, it's all on the feel, the pressure that's inside that touches my knee into my hip. So,
what have you figured out any?
Really hard to explain that.
No,
that makes
made
sense.
Perfect sense. Have you found any tricks that help you go downhill? Because that sounds much more difficult. And I was just imagining, like, is there any sort of a prong adaptation to the prosthetic that you've seen that like has a prong toward the heel for extra grip backwards, anything like that? Or do you just always have to have trekking poles? Does that help you go downhill?
There's a couple things. So like I'm wearing jeans, otherwise I try to show you my leg, but what I've done that's helped, if I know I'm going to go downhill for a long time, there's some screws on the joint, the ankle joint, that I could position the foot to be permanently pointing downwards or upwards. So if it's pointing downwards, it's going to be easier to go downhill because I have more surface area. So that helps a little bit, but it still does create a problem because when you're going downhill, there's still like a little ups here and downs there or a log. So trekking poles, I use sissy sticks from Peaks equipment. I love those guys. I work with them on a good durable pair of sticks because I fall down a lot, and these ones tend to work really well. Side heeling it going down is fine. If it's the right, just a little bit of a downhill, it's just fine. But it's when it's like straight down does it become a problem, especially if the ground's like hard. If it's soft, then I can kind of dig my heels in, and then I can cruise down just like you would. Like the dirt would kind of carry you down with you. So, but
yeah. We've had, like I mentioned, we've had some experience in some units close to where you're at, and there is a lot of blowdown, fallen trees in the boulder fields aplenty. At least where I've been at, it's not just trails everywhere, kind of rough. So
the boulder fields with downfall is probably the worst. Like I mean, it's hard for able bodies too, but like with prosthetics, like it just, you whip your leg around and it gets caught on stuff and I can't tell. And so it snags and then I fall forward. But since we were talking about downhill, that's initially that pressure of going downhill put pressure in spots on my carbon fiber. And there was a weak spot and that's where it broke. We talked earlier about Colorado. When I was hunting, I had my backpack on me and everything, all my gear. I think it was just that weight. And it was late at night. Finished, I went up by myself. I had a friend, he was on the other mountain though, but I had all my gear and I was coming down the hill to get to my truck. And I just started hearing a crack. I was like, oh, what the heck is that? I never had that happen before. And, I took a few more steps and I came down and the whole socket broke. Not where the joints are, which I could repair with screws and stuff like that, but right where the carbon fiber, it broke and I didn't have anything to repair it. And so I was like, crap, I didn't have GPS and it was in November. I didn't have like the Garmin InReach stuff. I didn't have cell phone service. And, it was, I don't know, it's one of those moments where it's like, crap, what do I do? So I sat there and I thought for a second, how do I get down? I thought, well, I can use my trekking poles and kind of maybe use them as crutches, but it just didn't work with that balance, with all my stuff and my rifle. I thought, do I leave this here and then try to get down there? But, then I got to drive all the way to Vernal, which is another 8 hours just to get a spare leg to come back to get my rifle and stuff. I didn't feel comfortable with that either. And then, how am I going to get back to my truck? Because I'm still a couple miles away. And so I just started crawling. And I crawled for about an hour and kind of got devastated. It was dark at this point. The snow was coming. And I was like, oh my gosh, this sucks. And so I just mentally was like, you know what? The only way I'm going to get through this is just what I can handle one moment at a time. And so I just thought, instead of thinking where the truck is, if I can just get across to this rock and go there and wait. And I'd go a little bit further and a little bit further. And I said, if I can just get to this trail, I finally got to this trail and there started going down the trail. And it was shortly that there was another person there coming off the same trail that was able to get my buddy. And then to him together and we got finished the last, half mile or something to my truck, but it was long.
The last half mile? So you did like a mile and a half by yourself crawling?
Yeah, about a mile. Yeah, a mile and a half. It took a long time. In fact, first flight, it was kind of I guess here's a plug for him, but like my pants were pretty shredded. It was merino pants. But my gloves, they held up. If I didn't have gloves, it would have sucked.
Yeah.
Wow.
Gloves, but yeah, that was the time. And I learned my lesson after that point. I got a little GPS from Garmin, and then when I go backpacking in my pack, I carry a fiberglass wrap. So basically, I got it from my doctor, my prosthetist, and it's like a cast when you break an arm, and you get it wet, and then you wrap it around the prosthetic where it broke, and then you let it dry, and then it's a strong bond, and it holds everything together. And so I put that in my backpack, and then just this last year, 2022, I summited Timpanogos right here by where you guys live.
Yeah.
And on my way down, the other leg broke in the exact same spot. So I was like, oh my gosh. And this is a lot worse because this is like 14 miles back to the truck. And luckily I did have that fiberglass kit, but it was at base camp. So it was still another mile and a half to get there. So my brother was with me, so he went down there to try to get to it. And so I tried to cover the distance by crawling a little bit. And And
Gosh,
it got a little bit dramatic because people thought I was hurt. I'm like, I'm not hurt. It just, sucks. And so somebody called search and rescue, and all of a sudden the helicopter shows up, and the rescue team was there, and they're like, we're getting you on this helicopter and we'll find you back. I'm like, no, we're not doing that, because I know how expensive that ride is going to be. Pretty as it sounds. And they're like, well, it's our duty to get you on there because, this could be very bad. And I says, well, I'll tell you what, as soon as my brother gets back, if it doesn't work, then I'll ride it. But, we were racing against time because that helicopter was hovering over our heads while we were patching this up. Because if they land,
gosh.
Wow.
So they patched my leg up, and the guy that I don't know, he's trail boss or whatever, the rescue team, they're there all the time because there's so many people that don't prepare for that hike or they pass out. So he had to inspect that my prosthetic was working. And so we started walking, and I was able to show him, I was hopping from rock to rock that would hold. And it did, sort of, it wobbled, but it still held. And I was able to hike all the way back. So,
Wow.
that was dramatic.
That
one I was worried about. More so just that I knew it was a pain in the ass. I mean, there was people on the trail, so I knew I wasn't going to die. Where the one in Colorado, that fear kind of set in. I was like, is this how I die? Or that is someone going to find me? Is a cougar going to get me? Because there's just, it was 10 degrees and there was nobody around.
Yeah, that's wild, man. Thank you for sharing. That is a wild experience. We have to do an annual crawl at that site. It'll be like the Mexican dudes on Breaking Bad. Did you guys see that?
I remember that.
Well, that's really cool, man. Yeah, thank you for sharing.
We had a couple questions on that story, and I think, we'll the links that we'll share to the video will kind of show some clips of that. That's already been done before, but I think I want to go into kind of a more behind the scenes approach, what's going on in your head. You mentioned the fear and all that. We you've told the action and the numbers and all that, but what were you thinking in Colorado? It's 10 degrees outside. It's starting to snow. It's the middle of the night. What was going through your head?
More so, I was wearing hunting clothes, so I just figured if I can just keep moving, that's the one thing. But mentally, one of the blessings that I have taken from my amputation story is that it's taught me a lot of things about patience. It's taught me a lot of things about overcoming fear, beating that with faith, having a purpose-driven life, be grateful for the things I have, having that positive balance or piece to overbalance that fear is what I focus a lot on. So I just kind of had to sit there for a second and think of, try to think logically, what are my options? Can't stay here. I'll freeze. It's going to snow. But I just thought if I can get to this point, I might have a chance. But I'm not going to think about the big alternative. From where I was on this hill, I could see my truck at the very bottom. I was like, holy shit, excuse me for the language. Holy crap, that's a long freaking.
That's all right.
I just know, estimating how far I'm at, it's 11, 10 o'clock, 11. I bet you I'll get there at 5 in the morning. But if we can make it that far. So, and it was exhausting just crawling, and then because of the pack and the weight, and then I still pack light, and I was honestly just about ready to drop it when I got really tired. But mentally, the fear part kicked in a little bit, but I just had to keep telling myself, don't think about a worst case scenario. Just think about what you can control. Focus on getting to that log, rest for a second, go a little bit further, go over this ledge, crawl a little bit further, just rest for a second, and just not think about a worst case scenario or, cougar or whatever coming at that point. Or is someone going to come? And just have faith. Like that's the one thing that I had that I could use is have faith. But what's interesting about faith, someone explained to me, is that faith and fear are virtually the same thing. They both are things we can't see. They both are things that we believe in. However, one has a positive meaning and one has a negative meaning. And honestly, if I could say what's the best way to beat fear, what's the antidote, it would be faith.
That's cool.
That belief, just something small.
Definitely inspiring for sure. So the title of our podcast, Survival of the Fittest, I think we're a few episodes in, and I've gotten some people saying, "Oh, you just like to talk about cavemen the whole time," which isn't true, but we do like to. But however, the meaning of our podcast is more comprehensive, especially in the modern context. Like, we're talking about survival as humans, and we want to reach back and look at, what it meant to survive as humans in ancient times, and then what that means today. And maybe we can take something from that as we move forward. So the question I have on this is, as you were literally crawling to survive, and I think you painted the picture of the environment around you, in a metaphorical sense, because I don't know if any of our listeners are going to be in that same spot. I hope they're not. But what does it mean for you and your family to survive and thrive in today's world? Maybe adopting that same faith over fear mindset.
Well, yeah, because there's so much distractions in this world. Like, if you watch the news, there's a lot of Debbie Downers, negative Nellies, that we see in the news and things that are happening. I mean, it's not just the way the news portrays it, which I don't need to go on to a big conspiracy theory, but there's some things that are happening in our world that are not looking good. And, as a father, it's been a concern for me, because it's like, frick, man, it was hard enough for me as a kid. And now my kids have all kinds of problems that they have to deal with that I had no idea that, how to handle that, because I never had to experience that. And so what I'm trying to hopefully that they can understand is, like, we're here on this earth for a reason. We, to make ourselves better, to find a path to live with God again. And I believe they were chosen to come to this earth at a certain time, because they're strong individuals and they can overcome some of these challenges. And if they can just focus on what's at task in hand, just like, for me, that was in that mountain, like what I can control, if they keep going and keep going and keep going, and, overcoming step by step, getting further, before you know it, they'll realize how much they've done, and they can accomplish anything, and they, I guess metaphorically speaking, they get to the truck, just like I did. I used to be afraid for them, because of, like, golly, Parker's Mellows, and like, you're so screwed. Like, you guys don't stand a chance. Like, there's just too much temptations in this world and troubles for you guys. And but I believe it's not going to be, not going to be easy, but they're going to get through it, and they're going to outshine me for sure.
Yeah, I think I'll forever think of that metaphor when I'm going through rough times, just doing what I can, not focusing on any other environmental factors, but just getting as far as I can, maybe take some sort of break. And I'm just trying to envision you doing that, and eventually you'll end up where you want to be. Or, in your case, someone is there to help you along the way, to help you get to where you need to be. So yeah, I think that's an excellent metaphor. Casey, any comments, questions?
Yeah. I like the optimism that he has for his kids. I've had similar thoughts. It's a kind of a scary landscape that might sit in front of us and our children. But I think just the awareness that life could get really complicated and difficult might bring more energy for us, specifically as parents or fathers, energy and passion behind raising our kids in a way that makes them resilient, makes them prepared for a more difficult life than what we had. If we just expected everything to be rosy, maybe there would be no reason to push our children to strengthen themselves and educate themselves and discipline themselves. But if we know that life's going to be quite rocky, my son's name's Rocky. If life's going to be pretty rocky, then yeah, we might put in the extra effort, go the extra mile to make them prepared to survive the next the next 100 years, the next few hundred years as a civilization, as a family tree. And maybe that's what is required to get humanity back on track, for more people to take note of that and turn that fear into hope, into faith, and put it into our children to redirect the course of what humans are doing to the earth and each other. And yeah.
No, you nailed it on the head. Is to prepare them the best you can. Like we don't know exactly what's in front of us, but what we can do is we can prepare them for these kind of scenarios. Whether it be survival instincts. They need to learn how to use, handling people, relationships. Put them through hard times, because that's the one thing that. I have a 10-year-old, for example. She's so picky about food. It's crazy. All my other kids eat so good. They eat elk and fish and anything we cook. But my 10-year-old just does not like red meat and, things that we make. And so I was like, oh my gosh, one of the things that we do is we go through our emergency preparedness meals, and we fix them just to say, hey, this is what life could be like. We're going to be drinking water out of the back of the toilet. And we didn't do that, but we this is life. This is how we would prepare a meal if all the grocery stores are closed and there's nothing. So we're going to use our little food storage just as a test to see how it's like. And our kids, they ate these freeze-dried meals and they loved it. And my 10-year-old is like, ugh. I'm like, well, you'll probably die first.
It's the name of the podcast.
Yeah. My God.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. That's a really cool practice. I mean, I think there's a lot of reasons to do that. One, because your food storage does expire, and so there is reason to consume it with regularity. But also to be able to give your kids a reality check to say, hey, best case scenario, this is what we're eating. Worst case scenario is the neighbors,
The neighbor's dog. I had them grind their own wheat and we put it in cereal, and there was like, ugh. I'm like, yeah, it is pretty gross, but wheat's got some calories and we need the calories.
Oh, nice. We're all going to get really skinny.
Yeah. Okay, so kind of on this topic, another question is, we talk about fight or flight a lot. I think that's ingrained in pretty much any living animal, human or not. And it seems like throughout your life, we haven't really met or known each other for a long time, but when you were diagnosed with the disease, it was fight or flight. You chose fight. And when you were told, when you were starting to break down, it was fight or flight, and you chose fight. And the amputation, and you just keep choosing fight, and you're just fighting and fighting. And the question I have is, not saying that this is some sort of blessing, because maybe some people would say, well, that's sick to think of it that way. But how has this battle progressively through your life made you better, stronger, a better husband, a better father than you thought you could be?
Yeah, that's a great question. and yeah, fight or flight is, I think the more we have examples of fight or flight moments, the better we are. You know, I look for those kind of moments. I know it sounds pretty disturbing, but when I go hunting, you know, those I love those tests where it's like, oh golly, you know, I gotta pack this elk out, and some people are like, oh, that sucks. No, it's gonna hurt. And I'm like, oh, there's nothing better than sweaty backs and sweaty cracks. Let's go get this. And so I love a good old fashioned pack out because it's hard work. But I guess with the disease and where I do look at it as a blessing, and not my whole life. Like growing up, I always thought it was kind of like a curse because I always, as a kid, you didn't know anything different. Like I compared myself to, you know, kids at the playground. They all got to play, or even my siblings. They got to, you know, my siblings got to climb King's Peak as Boy Scouts and Scouts, and I didn't get to do that. And so I thought, oh, this is just, you know, God doesn't love you as much, that kind of stuff, which is, you know, I think about it now, it's like, oh, I can't believe I thought that. But even when I lost my legs and still running, I still had a little bit of resentment about my situation because it's, you know, it sucks to put your legs on sometimes, and that doesn't always feel good. It hurts, and you trip a lot, and it's super expensive when prosthetics break, and you know, people look at you, and of course, every time I go to the airport, everyone tells me thank you for my service and that kind of stuff. And so there's that aspect. But when I was doing the Ironman in Florida, which is you know, this big triathlon that I, you know, spent years and years working towards as my big goal when I lost my legs, it wasn't till towards the end of the race I hit a wall. And I do a little public speaking, and I talk about this moment. I call it mile 133. And I hit this wall where all my adrenaline wore off through the race. And I've been on the course for, you know, 15 hours at this point. It's maybe 14 hours. I don't remember, but I'm exhausted, tired. My limbs started hurting really, really, really bad. And I took it off, and I had all this blood from all these blisters, and I had an incision that opened up, and it was just awful. So I hurried and put my leg back on, and I tried to run a little bit more, and I had to take it off again just to get like blood flow back to my limbs. And I was looking at my watch, and it was telling me that my pace had gone from, you know, 9 to 10 minute miles till like 26, 27 minute miles. And that's not good. I was just adding it up. I'm not going to finish this race in time before they close in order to be an Ironman. And so I was getting pretty bummed and devastated. And so I just tried to think something positive to try to get me to that next level. And so I was like, golly, if I could think of things that helped, you know, make me happy. I just thought of things, and ultimately my family. I'm grateful for my family and my friends, and you know, my parents who've taught me, you know, many good things about my life and some of the hobbies that I'm still able to do. The fact that I'm out here, you know, doing this race is amazing. I started thinking that my hands, even though they were deteriorating, I still have them. They still function. You know, my eyesight, I still have my eyesight, and I could talk. I have a great job. But then when I worked down to my feet is when it finally dawned on me, was I grateful for my feet? And if it wasn't for my feet, I would never had the motivation to do this race. I met some amazing people in my life. It's taught me things such as patience and perseverance, and, you know, pain tolerance. And, you know, some of the stresses that I have at work are not a big deal at all, because I dealt with a lot more chaos with my medical situation. And because of that, it's helped me, you know, get promoted in the company and have a better job, and helped me be more patient as a spouse. And I have a really, really good marriage. And And so then I was like, golly, you know, there's so many things in life that I look at and I find myself comparison is what was robbing me of all that. And in reality, I have a great life. I have so many good things going for me. And in the end, the best things that were going for me was because of my feet and my scenario, this whole disease that I've had, and it's made me a better person because of it. So that's a long story. Sorry, a long answer to what
No, you're good.
That's the best way I can explain to it. Is it's been a blessing, and it's taught me so many good things that I would never ever, you know, if God said, okay, we're going to do this again, you get this life, and this life, which one do you want to choose? I would pick this same life and go through the same trials. Maybe a little more hair on my head, Lord. I don't.
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a beautiful answer, man. I was hoping that's what I was hoping somebody in your situation would feel. And I mean, a lot of us get to feel that about much less obvious or maybe less significant obstacles in our own life. But yeah, I think that difficulty, challenge, anything that puts you in the furnace to be forged, like that is what makes great people great. And a big problem with a lot of people in our generation specifically is we've really not had a whole lot of resistance to just surviving and day-to-day interactions. And so all these smaller things like mild chronic anxiety, and I don't say this as somebody who's never experienced anxiety, but mild anxiety all the time about little interactions with people in the grocery store. Like, yeah, if you went to war, or if you starved for a week and a half during a depressed economic state, or your parents, something happened to your parents and you're alone, like these things, the significance gets pushed way down in comparison. And so to hear you talk about just what sets off your alarm systems after having gone through what you've been through, and to associate so many positive things that are going for you with the challenges that you feel like God prescribed to you, and saying like, I don't think I could have all of this abundance and this awesome experience without it. I mean, that's such a healthy and exciting perspective to hear.
I thank you very much, but I wish I could explain that better to people that come to me with looking for advice in life, and I don't know everybody's problems. Everybody has their own set of problems. Mine are more visible, but I think the principle stands the same, where we're given challenges, and there's a reason that we have them for, and not necessarily a reason, but more so like the outcome of what you learn and gain from it ultimately is your choice. You can choose whether to be like, well, I guess this is just the way thing is, and this is just things are meant to be this way, and you can just sit in your parents' basement and sulk, and anytime something hard comes in your life, you stress and shut down. That's ultimately your choice. Or you take that head on and we'll say, okay, what can I learn from it? And how can I, get better at it? Every successful person has had their own set of trials, and why they are successful is they ultimately made their testimony. One of my favorite quotes, I can't remember who it's from, but it goes, challenges is what makes life interesting. It's when we overcome them, it's going to give your life meaning, or make it more meaningful. Sorry, I just slugged with that.
No, you're good. Cool. Well, I think that maybe it's a good time to shift into like talking a little bit more about healing that comes from the backcountry, the outdoors, out on hunts, etc. We live in a world where we're all talking over the internet right now through cameras and microphones and headphones and all that stuff. And that's baseline fundamental technology nowadays. There's far more advances and some really cool stuff that is very exciting for a lot of people. I enjoy it. However, I find that my most meaningful, memorable moments are when I'm unplugged from that, when I'm out under the stars, when I'm hearing, animals making noises and just out in the elements. What could you speak to the healing, the joy, just the experience that you've had that the outdoors has brought to you, and kind of a living that might be more consistent with our primal ancestors, what they lived with every day?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I'll share a quick story, but why I feel, since we're talking about the outdoors and hunting, but we talked a little bit earlier about disabled outdoorsmen, and what I do with that. It's a nonprofit charity that I run here in Utah, where me and some buddies, we take people in the outdoors, we introduce them to some of the things, and that they can have capability of and hunt and harvest an animal with whatever limitations they have. One of the hunters that was introduced to us, his name is Adam, and Adam's a great guy. He's a big athlete. He was a mountain bike expert, and he had just a real small incident where he went over a rock and landed on his neck, and it broke his spine. And he was paralyzed from the waist down. And this was not a good move for him because he was so active. He was a provider for his family. He had kids, and he was, in a chair, and that was not a lifestyle he wanted to live. And he was very distraught about it. And he had very similar thoughts that I had with suicide. And it was, a bad spot for him. And so we got word of him that he was in a bad spot, and we took him on a dove hunt, and he really liked it. And I got an opportunity to take him on an antelope hunt, and he shot his first big game animal with my gun, and it was amazing, great shot, and he was ecstatic, like he was on cloud nine. He loved it, and he loved it so much that he ended up going hunting on his own, without any help. We got one of these special, we call them track chairs, that gives you a little more mobility on the ground. Then he started taking other paraplegics out hunting as well, and then helping us with other hunters, and helping our organization grow. And totally different guy, living great, and what condoned that attitude was what hunting and the outdoors does, especially for men, is he lost that piece that he thought was gone forever. And that was, I'm a man, I can provide for my family, put meat on the table. I have this, which is our primal instinct as men, that's kind of what we do. We're hunters. And he thought that was gone. Like, even though he wasn't a hunter, he just thought, I can't contribute. But now that I can, I do it differently, but I still can. I still got this. I could still put food on the table. I could still do manly things like hunting. It saved his life. And to me, that is what the outdoor does. When I'm in the outdoors, I'm loving it. Like, there's a spiritual connection, especially when you look at the stars. If you've seen that movie Contact with Jodie Foster, it's like, I love that movie because it just makes you realize we're just a small, small piece in this world, but we all have a purpose here. And it just solidifies that we're here to survive, and we're here to bring what we learn in this knowledge and carry it down to our children.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting paradox because it is humbling, yet very energizing and strengthening at the same time. It makes you feel small because you're in such a big place and you don't, like, you can't be dependent on a lot of things. But being in that position, and especially hunting and bringing meat home, I think is, for me, one of the most strengthening and fulfilling things that I've done in my life. And I didn't grow up hunting. Like, I've been doing it the last 4 years, and it's been a change to my identity. It's been amazing. I'm not going to say it saved my life, like the example you were given with Adam, but yeah, it's a beautiful thing what it can offer.
Mm.
Yeah. So I'm going to follow up if you don't mind. And I know this is this is really personal, not pretty personal, really personal, but you had hinted at the fact that in your darkest days, it was pretty dark. Mm-hmm. So if as comfortable as you I guess share as much as you're comfortable with, but when were your darkest days, and what were the things that brought light into your life or helped you get through that?
Yeah, it was, it's funny because, like, we're talking about suicide here. Like, what's interesting about people, close people that I know have committed suicide, it always blows people's minds. Like, how come that they do that? That's, so selfish, which it is. But until you're down that road, you kind of understand that you're just in so much confusion and pain and darkness, and the adversary's got you so heavily thinking about negativity. You can't function. Like, fear is taken over you, that it's pretty much made you disabled, where you can't think clearly. And for me, that was that route. I was constantly cutting myself. I was like, you're not worth it. You're a menace to this family. You're going to just rack up these bills. Your wife didn't sign up to be a caretaker, all that stuff. However, when I lost my first leg, I had this infection, and I had to re-amputate it again. And that was a real kick in the butt, because I just was like thinking, this is never ending and just constantly going backwards now. And I told the doctor, this sucks. I don't want to do this. And that's when I was thinking about ways to just be like, call it quits. But I was learning to walk with the prosthetic that I had. And at that same time, my 10-year-old was learning to walk as well. And I have a picture that I remember that we're both going down the hallway, holding on to each other, trying to walk together. And then it just kind of thought to me, it's like, like I said earlier in the podcast, like, I've always looked at life that God had given me this curse, and I had this resentment built up. And it's, it's not fair. Life's not fair that I was given this part of my body. But what's not fair is, if I did end my life, then my kids have to have that damage to them because of me. And that's not fair to them. So I had to keep fighting for my kids. And that was kind of the big turnaround, that, giving up was just not an option. Like, I had to do it for them.
Yeah, I think what I'm fascinated with is how you've stretched the capabilities of the human spirit, and where someone might say, this is my limit, and they might not know that. Like, I feel like you faced it and you knew, this is my limit, but what can I do about it?
Mm-hmm.
And I think, you've made, even though it may not have been easy decisions, especially at the time, you've made the right decisions just to keep fighting through each one of those kind of moments where you hit your limit. And you've grown so much from it, sounds like. And you can obviously tell with just the caliber of person that you are and the impact that you have on people and your outlook and positivity on life. Like, it's a genuine feeling, you know?
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Cool. Well, so talking about survival, and I hope you don't take this the wrong way.
No worries.
But you get it. If there is an instance of, a predator prey in the wild, typically the mountain lions, they go after the young, the fawns, the calves, right? All the predators will go after those that are less capable. And in a lot of cases, those that may be wounded. And in your case, you didn't ask to be wounded. You developed that. Mm-hmm. However, and in the old sense, survival would have been next to impossible, right?
Yeah. I was born at this time because other times used to be a lot harder.
And a lot of people would say, survival of the fittest is just, it's a primal saying. Well, look what the example is in your life. Modern technology, the therapy, the ability to invent these prosthetics for you to just rip up the mountain and kill bigger bucks than all of us. You're surviving, and not just that you have that, ability to do so, but it's also in all ways of your life. It's like helped you survive and fight and push forward. I don't know. That's just really an observation more than it is a question. But do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, to your big buck thing, I'd rather be a lucky hunter than a good hunter any day. So a lot of my animals, I've just good things have happened, but I'm also very hard-headed. So I get stubborn and I get fixated on a certain animal. But I love that what you said, because with modern prosthetics, it has helped me. And I'm grateful for the time that I live in, because it would suck to do this with wooden legs, like a pirate or something like that. But I don't know. One thing I've been blessed for. This has been because I know so many amputees, and everybody has their own set of problems dealing with prosthetic legs. I've been really blessed. In the beginning, it was really, really, really hard to get used to them, but now it's to the point now. I don't think about being an amputee as much. It's like, I don't know if you guys wear contacts, but you wake up and you put on your contacts. I wake up and I just put on my legs. I go to the gym and have personal goals to look, to get stronger in this area and work in this area doing X, Y, and Z, or go on this adventure. I don't think about my limitations. I think about being a two-legged freak just like you guys.
Cool. I like that. Well, I think we're going to wrap up here shortly. One thing before we do, we like to do something called a shameless shout out. We don't have too many people in our camp, so we like to suggest things for people to get involved in, whether it's, a certain brand or product. And for tonight, we've picked Advocating for Disabled Outdoorsmen of Utah as the shameless shout out. I know when we talked originally at the expo, I was mainly saying, hey, we've got this podcast, we want to see what we can do to make the world a better place, if there's any service, any activities that we have. And you were kind of explaining that to me, which I'll say what I remember. And then maybe if you want to plug some more ways of how people could help advocate. But it sounds like you do a lot of things for youth too, and disabled outdoorsmen. You help disabled youth get out there and create those experiences. And maybe it can Well, I'll let you speak to that. But the thing I remember is like gear, if you have certain gear you can donate to help these kids who might not have that in their home or, have the funds to afford that. That's something that's willingly accepted. But what are other ways that, our listeners or anyone listening to this, that they can help out with the cause with disabled outdoorsmen?
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad you picked that one. That's something I'm passionate about. Like I have my 9-to-5 job, and this has been something that I've been doing on the side that's been growing, and it can be possible without my buddies Mike and Blake that are on our board that help patch things together. But yeah, we do a lot for the youth. We have a lot of opportunities for the youth. We also, take out, men, women, and children, veterans, and so forth. But for the youth specifically, what we got going on, we take them hunting. We get kind of act as their mentor. We get opportunities and tags through the state of Utah, Arizona, Idaho, Colorado, Wyoming. There are different programs. We do get some big tags too. We have some opportunities to hunt big elk with CWMU properties. We've had landowners donate them and then they're able to get tax receipts because we're a 501c3. So that's kind of the things we do. But like I said, we all have jobs. So if anyone is in interest of helping with those hunts, we'd love for you to come out first to our events. So that way we can get to know you. You can see kind of what we're all about. And then we kind of like to coordinate those hunts. We start that process in June. So this announcement will be the first time we're probably going to announce it because I just got done with my board meeting. We haven't announced it on our social media yet because we're just trying to coordinate a few things on our website first to get our sign up. So watch out for this. But in June 8th, we're doing a shed hunt for the youth. And so they come out, we'll be out on Diamond Mountain where I live. And we usually have about 200 to 300 sheds that we'll have prepared for the youth to go find. We have different equipment for track chairs. We have amputees. We have little people. We have, spina bifida. We have even mental disorders. So like we have some with autism and Down syndrome that we've helped go and find these sheds. So if people want to help with that one, we'll have a sign up there or want to reach out. Or one of the big things they could do is if you have sheds, any sheds, brown, white, yellow, whatever, and they want to donate out, reach out to our do_Utah page or to me personally where we can meet up. And we'll have different drop-offs on the Wasatch Front for you to take those sheds to, and then we can use them. And we've had everything from chalky 2 points to a Yukon moose paddle. So
Wow.
these kids, like they've never found sheds, so they think it's the coolest thing, to find an elk horn or a deer, or we even had a few whitetail sheds, and we're like, oh, well, there's whitetail in Utah, you betcha.
Well, that's really cool. Go ahead, Casey.
I was going to say some of those kids with autism are going to be like, no. They're like, no, they're not.
There's some of them that outsmart. They're like they're usually the ones that are just like gung ho to go do it because it's a challenge and they're focused.
Yeah.
So I bet you some of the best shed hunters probably that we see on social media might be on the spectrum. Who knows?
You're probably right. That's funny.
Cool. Well, we'll keep notes of that one and kind of resurface that when we've got podcasts coming out during that time, just to remind folks that they can help out. And I've got the information from that card you gave me, so we'll link that in the show notes and stuff. And if people want to reach out, if they can't make it to that event and want to contribute in some way, that I'm sure that you can accommodate them somehow.
Yeah, because like I said, that's the only thing that's frustrating is time and money. We've been blessed to have some money come our ways that we were able to do more things, but again, time's also very important too. So if you have the time and you want to come on some of our hunts, and then maybe even have an opportunity to take someone out on your own, that we'd love that too.
Cool. Well, we really appreciate you taking the time today. We'll just, I don't know, maybe a sentence or two. We just do like a last call. If you had anything you wanted to bring up or wanted to say to close it out, we'll go around the horn and do so. I'll go ahead and start. I kind of like to live by the phrase of give way more than you take. I try to keep that in balance, try and give more. But I feel like I've taken so much from this conversation and I don't feel worthy of it. And I'm not just saying that to make anyone feel good, but just for me, I feel like it was enlightening to have you on the podcast today. And I hope that our listeners can find that too. So I have nothing else to say besides a huge thank you for you dedicating, your time, especially in the wee hours of the night, to share this time with us. So truly, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I'll go next. I would say that what I've taken away from the conversation is something I already did comment on in the middle of this, is the perspective that he described of how this curse that he thought he was given has turned out to be a blessing in so many ways. If he or you or I decides to look at it that way. And in my own life, I can reflect on so many things I considered as challenges or obstacles that without those, I don't know what sort of a person I would have been, but I think that's such a healthy way to look at life and look at the challenges that you're given. And if you're able to survive them and come out a better person, you can instead of having what's the word? Resentment toward the universe, toward your God, you can have appreciation for the fact that you're still alive. Mm-hmm. And the skills and the tools that you have came from each experience that you've had up to that point, whether they be relatively mild or really, really difficult. And maybe your axe is more sharp if they're more difficult. And so that was a really cool perspective that I'll probably keep for a very long time and probably share it over and over.
Awesome. Thanks, Casey. I guess I'm next. I guess my last call would be more of a challenge to your listeners, I guess. You've kind of heard my story. There's been some unsung heroes in my story that I don't get a chance to thank. One is my wife. Obviously, she's been always supportive of me. She hasn't left me, thank goodness, from this whole thing. I like to tell her, well, now that I'm a double amputee, you get that handicap parking pass. So there is some perks being married to me. So, but the other one is my dad. My dad's taught me how to hunt. He's taught me how to, to be a man. But during these hard times, like, he also was my cheerleader. He was the guy in my back corner, saying, hey, you got this. Even when the doctor told me that I would become a double amputee, he was there at my doctor's appointment. And, I was crying, on his shoulder because I just was so distraught. And I think perhaps, everybody here listening has had a person in their life, whether it be a teacher, a parent, a friend, a coach. And if you haven't had that person in your life, I would sign up to be that person, because I do think that we are worth it in this world. There's worth value in each one of us. But if you do have that person, just think about them for a moment, think of their face, whether they're here on this earth or if they've passed and moved on. But that person, I think the challenge I want to give to you is to remember that person and to move on and be strong because they believed in you and they were right about you. And so give them and prove them right. You know, I want you to focus that you are worth it and prove them right. Like I said, if you don't have that person, you know, I'd love to sign up. I would love to be that person. Reached out to me. But there's also another person that people sometimes forget about, and he knows us better than anyone else. And that's God. You know, he put us on this earth and he loves us more than anybody. And that's if you're willing to fight for anybody, fight for him. So
cool.
That's beautiful, Sid. Thank you, man.
Thanks. Well, I'm going to give out my fancy little sign off for us. We're just trying to crank out good content for you folks, and we're doing it for free on our dime. So in return, we just ask that you like or subscribe, set up the alerts. If you're wondering, what does that even do for you? It really does help us out. It gives us better positioning with algorithms on different sites. We got to kind of play their games. So if you can help us that way, we'd really appreciate it. If you're on listening to the podcast on Spotify, the ratings really help. So if you can hit the furthest right star. And then Sidney, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm thinking maybe we'll catch you in the elk woods and up in your neck of the woods. Maybe we'll cross paths.
Sure. Yeah. No, the South Slope, you nailed it. You know exactly where I'm at. So let me know again.
We'll be looking for yours if we can find any specialized tracks. We're like, Sydney's in here. Hey, I was gonna say his Instagram handle is try_no-feet. Try_no-feet. He posts, I mean, he's got videos and pictures of his Ironman. I was just thinking about that the other day, that I think that might be something I put on my list to do. And so I might be reaching out to you personally to learn more about your experience.
I'll tell you how to start it up. And that's 1 mile at a time, buddy.
Okay. Well, thanks again, Sid. That was great.
Okay.
Anything else, Cole?
No, I think we're good. Have a good night, fellas. Appreciate your time.
Perfect.
See you, brother.
See you guys.
Good.